Used to running the meeting. We can do the Pledge of Allegiance before we start. That's fine. If everybody could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay? Your time is on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Is this working? Okay. I'm Valerie Freeman, former Ojai Arts Commissioner, head of Arts Grants. And the following comments and recommendations are from my experience while serving on the Ojai Arts Commission. First one being conflict of interest for commissioners and ad hoc committee members. We need vetting when city funds are being recommended by commissioners and ad hoc members with disclosures. First, is the recipient a family member to receive public funds? Have you or plan to collaborate on events and projects with recipients? Have you or plan to do business with recipients? Have you received favors, complimentary advertising, invitations, etc. from recipients? Have you or plan to sponsor or promote the recipients? Another issue that came up was voting at commission city public meetings. Processes of a commission may use to appear to vote in collegial unison at public meetings. Pressure voting by fellow commissioners prior to public meetings. Commissioners have to vote according to the demand of some committee chairs. Voting on items not on public meeting agendas. And commissioners must support majority vote, even if the vote is in violation of the Brown Act and city ordinances. Another item is the communication between commissioners, city staff, and city council. Serial meetings and hub, spoke, and wheel method used by commissioners. And in the case of the Arts Commission, there was you need 3 for a quorum. Private meetings, communication between 3 or more commissioners for decisions prior to public meetings. Example, you have a chair, a co-chair, and a commissioner head of a committee discussing and making decisions before the meeting, so the meetings go smoothly and everybody votes the same. The solution would be to increase the commission to 7 commissioners. So 3 commissioners will not create a quorum. Another issue is only the chair is allowed to communicate with city staff. This creates a problem for commissioners not being able to just discuss concerns with city staff or send out press releases. A solution would be to allow commissioners to email city staff press releases and copy the chair. And another thing would be to have each commissioner select 2 city council to review and communicate concerns to city staff. Thank you. I hope this is helpful.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so we will get the training started. It's a public meeting, so there is public comment. The plan for this evening is we're gonna do a training for about an hour, to take a 15-minute break, and then keep going for another hour. And then we'll be done, and you'll be good for 2 years on your AB 1234 training. Okay? So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Taylor Anderson. I'm the Assistant City Attorney of Ojai. I'm excited to be here today and talk to you about all the things. So the objectives of this training are to familiarize you with the laws that govern your conduct as a commissioner and to really help you understand when to ask questions. There is way too many laws that apply to you for you to possibly memorize all of them in this 2-hour session. The point of this is for you to get, usually say a spidey sense like Spider-Man, right? That tingling where you know that you need to ask questions because something seems like it might be wrong or you might need more information in order to move forward. That's the point of this. It's to help you issue spot ethics and move forward ethically as commissioners and council members. Oh, that's me. That's a so there's a cartoon version of me in this presentation. I also convinced Matt, our city attorney, to make one, so he will be guest starring. I hope that she follows you as like a little Jiminy Cricket in your service of when thinking about doing the right thing, that she pops up in your mind, or Matt's version, that's fine too. To remember what the rules are for ethics and your legal requirements. So a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to note the point of this part of the presentation and the whole presentation is not to make you feel bad. I've had that experience a lot with commissioners and council members. When we go through the rules, you recognize that maybe you've been doing something wrong or not completely compliant with the law. The point of this isn't to make you feel bad. It's to help you do the right thing. So, it's also so that we can ensure that we're having productive commissions and a productive council, right? So we cover some of the ethics rules there. The first thing is Ojai's values. They're posted in the City Hall chambers. I'm not going to read them to you because they're quite long, but overarching goals here is transparency and open communications, respect, accountability, and engagement. It's really important for ethics to think of them as minimum standards and not... You're encouraged to think of ethical values, not minimum standards, sorry. And then to think of these things in addition to responsibility, trustworthiness, respect, and fairness when you're exercising your duties. So there's a big difference between ethics laws and just ethics. So the law is what you have to do. It's the starting point for an ethical analysis, usually for like conflicts of interest is a big one, or, bribery is another big one, right? Not to take bribes in the decisions that you're doing. But ethics is just because it's what we should do. Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's ethical to do that, or that we're building the public trust by making that decision. Whoop, going too fast. So public service is different. It's not the same as the public sector. It's right in the title. You're public facing. We are all here to serve the public. It's really important for us to maintain the public's trust in what we're doing. If the public doesn't trust us, they won't tell us what their problems are. They won't tell us the services that they need, and we can't be responsive to those needs. And that's the whole point that we're here, is to serve them. So it's really important that they trust us and feel like they can come to us in a safe space, not only in public comment, but in one-on-one interactions as well. So as a commissioner and council member, you can help build the public's trust by knowing, understanding, and following the rules that apply to you, by remembering that perception is reality, even if it's not true and someone thinks that it's true. I mean, I think that we've seen that in the news time and time again. It doesn't matter what the reality is oftentimes. If it looks like something bad is happening, the public will think something as bad is happening. With that, the rules for ethics are very complicated. So if you come to Matt or I and ask us a question on the fly, we're going to give you the most conservative answer to ensure that we're preserving the public's trust and that we're protecting you, right? So if there's even a small whiff that there might be a conflict, we recommend that you recuse yourself to protect usually the decision that's being made and to make sure that there's no appearance of impropriety. That's really legally, right? So it's appearance of wrongdoing. We want to avoid any appearances of wrongdoing, but we will walk through what you have to do and what we recommend you should do in those instances. So some tools to help you as you move through your service. Ask yourself, What decision, behavior, or course of action will best promote the public's trust in my leadership and that of the city? What I want to read about my course of action on the front page of the OVN. How do I want to be remembered as a public official? Would it make my family proud? Do I have a nagging feeling, or that spidey sense, right, that you have a conflict on a decision? And should you ask for help from the FPP's or the city attorney's office? Even if you're not legally required to recuse yourself, you may want to recuse yourself in certain instances to ensure that the public doesn't have the perception that you're doing something wrong. So as a commissioner and a council member, you are a part of a body. You magically stop becoming an individual when you join a commission or the council. So you're part of a whole. Provide your opinion. You provide your opinion by voting on items. The individual opinions of commissioners or council members do not equal any action. You are always allowed to come to city council or other commissions and provide public comment as an individual. If you choose to do that, you should identify yourself. This community is very close-knit. Everybody knows who everybody is. Make sure that you're being clear when you're representing yourself as an individual or your commission. Typically, the chair is the only person who can represent the opinions of the commission, either in writing or to the council. There are instances where the commission can approve, the vice chair or another commissioner to act on their behalf when they voted on a decision. And then majority dictates the body's position. Even if you don't agree with the majority's position, it's best to take it in stride and respect the decision. Oftentimes we have commissioners who and council members who lash out because they don't agree with what the majority decided, but this is what democracy is. So respecting democracy, honoring that, being respectful of each other. So how to provide your opinion as a commission? So, fun fact, every commission except the BAB acts in an advisory capacity to the city council, right? Some of the commissions have special powers to, like planning commission. They get to approve permits. They get to make recommendations on ordinances. I believe the Arts Commission gets to approve contracts. The HPC, they also have oversight over some permits. But all of the commissions, except for the BAB, are advisory to council. And what that means is, as a body, you vote on your recommendation to council. So saying things in a meeting that you disagree with what council is doing, you want these things to change, even coming to public comment sometimes. Coming to public comment as an individual and weighing in on what you want to have happen is an option. However, if you want council to consider something for your body, you need to vote on it as a body and agree what your recommendation to council is. Then council may or may not consider that recommendation. They're not obligated to do so, and they might change it. And they're totally allowed to change it. They were voted in by the voters and residents of Ojai to do that. And once you make a recommendation to council, I recommend that you let it go, right? That you've given your opinion, but that may be subject to change based off more information later. So if approved, council provides direction to the city manager to implement, and then the city manager directs staff on how to implement council's direction. Feel like my little guy's going to sleep. I needed magic. Okay, how to request legal opinions. So, requests for legal opinions go through commission staff. Staff will escalate it to the city attorney's office as appropriate. And I just want to note here, Ojai is full of very educated and intelligent people. a lot of people that serve on the commissions are attorney. You are not the attorney for the city. You are not the attorney for your commission. I'm not going to get into the ethics of the appropriateness of giving legal advice from the dais or to the community if you're an attorney about city business. That's our job. So please don't do that. And if you have an issue with our legal opinion, our door is open. We're happy to discuss it with you and the logic behind our reasoning. But again, it's not appropriate for commissioners to be giving legal advice from the dais. Talking about prohibitions, you also are prohibited from directing staff. Ojai is a city manager form of government. That means that council has entrusted the city manager to run the day-to-day operations of the city. So it's hiring and firing employees, including the city attorney, excluding the city attorney, not including, my apologies. Managing day-to-day operations, so like city programs, applications for permits and licenses, projects, and any other business of the city. As a city manager form of government, you can't direct staff as a body or as an individual, and that's true for council members and for commissioners. And you can't get involved in the day-to-day city operations. So like telling staff you should be doing these actions, why aren't you doing things this way? That's not appropriate. This rule also prevents public officials, such as yourself, from influencing staff making a decision. I don't see that as much here. I've seen it in other agencies where behind the scenes council members will try to influence whether a permit gets approved or gets special treatment for not only constitutional reasons and due process. That's not appropriate, but also because you're not supposed to be directing staff in the first place. There is an exception to this. Council can approve how staff time is spent if it's a project above and beyond what is normally budgeted. But then even if that happens, it's Ben's job, city manager, to accomplish the goal and direct staff in how to do that. Speaking of staff, don't attack them. Please and thank you. You look like a bully when you attack staff because they can't defend themselves. I also, if you were at work, I'm sure that you wouldn't appreciate someone in a public meeting attacking you about how you did your job. It negatively impacts morale and it contributes to a high staff turnover. I can tell you the city manager is working very diligently to keep staff and draw people into Ojai. We're situated, it's a little bit of a commute to get here, and so it can be difficult to get staff. And working for a commission that is terrible to staff, I can't tell you how devastating it is for staff. It really impacts morale. It's not really fair to them. It's also not productive berating them in public if you disagree with the way that they're doing things. It also makes the city look incompetent. You're an extension of the city as a commission. And, we hired these people, didn't we? And so if you have questions about staff's performance, talk to Ben directly, privately, or it belongs in closed session with city council. You also, I'm going to note, agreed to uphold the city's values, which include respecting each other and respecting the public. Speaking of attacks, don't attack each other. Treating each other with respect encourages teamwork. Respectful dialogue fosters collaborative environment where members can work together effectively on community issues. Public trust. Maintaining the confidence in city leadership, right? So a civil discourse helps maintain the public's trust in local government. When you attack each other, it erodes their faith in leaders. I've seen this time and time again. And there's a spider. Focus on the issues. So attacking individuals shifts the focus away from the important community issues and keep discussions constructive. Ensures that the community's needs are prioritized. That's a whole reason that we're in, hopefully, public service, right? Is to serve the community. I can tell you in my experience with Ojai in the very short time, I put this meme up here because y'all care a heck of a lot. And sometimes you care really loudly at each other. And I think that there's a better way to go forward that's significantly more civil, doesn't impact morale. It also gives the public permission to treat you that way. So if your body is yelling at each other and being disrespectful to each other, humans mimic each other. We see it with babies, right? The copying. The public will copy that back to you. And it's really not fun to be in those meetings, and it's not productive, and it's extremely draining, and it makes public service not fun. You're setting an example for not only constituents, but young people. If the discourse is confrontational, why would anybody want to come serve on a commission or council? Why would young people want to get engaged with government if they're treated with a lack of respect? So positive behavior encourages civic engagement and respectful dialogue in the community. Conflict resolution. So constructive conversations lead to a better understanding and solution, where personal attacks escalate, create tension, divisions. It's, like I said, it's not enjoyable to do it. It's also not productive. We can't get business done for the residents, and that's why we're here. And then professionalism. It enhances your credibility and effectiveness, and respectful interactions reflect well on the city's bodies as a whole and enhance its credibility. Okay. That part's over. We'll get into conflicts of interest. I know you're waiting. We also have videos of examples of things that not to do to break up me talking the entire time, so I promise that that's coming. So the spider is like really making the rounds. Okay. So financial conflicts, contract conflicts, conflicts in campaign contributions, incompatible offices, when you leave office, and then miscellaneous stuff I didn't have a conflict title for. So is everything okay? So the possibility of your personal financial gain or loss, or the gain or loss of your immediate family, can't be the reason that you make decisions. Laws in this area are designed to promote general ethical values of responsibility and trust. As a public servant, you have responsibility to act always in the public's interest, and the public need to be able to trust that you will. As we're getting into the meat of this presentation also, if you have questions, please raise your hand as we're going through the slides. We are going to cover a lot of material. It'd be better to talk about it when the slide with the law and the information on it is there, so we don't have to backtrack, and we can address your question right away. Okay. Has anybody heard of the City of Bell? Yeah. So City of Bell, small city, 34,000 people. Voter turnout was in the single digits, poor working class, immigrant families, no press, charter city. Starting salary was $78,000. Over time, the city administrator, which is their version of a city manager, Robert Rizzo, collected about $800,000 with annual salary increases of 12%. That's twice the president of the United States, in case you're curious. He was expected to receive a pension and benefits of over $1 million. So the former mayor, city administrator, and assistant city administrator, and 4 other council members were involved. 7 Bell officials went to prison. Rizzo in Spacia for 12 years and had to repay nearly $9 million. So I'm going to play this video for you as an example of what to do. And yeah. We'll just
taxpayer outrage and one answer. Police in Bell, California fanned out today, arresting the mayor and 7 other city officials charged with bilking struggling taxpayers' salaries in the stratosphere. It started with anger and now criminal charges. Here's Mike Van Friend.
A raucous crowd gathered outside City Hall as word spread that officials were being rounded up and arrested. One even had his door broken down by a police battering ram.
They used the tax dollars collected from the hardworking citizens of Bell as our own piggy bank which they then looted at will.
Former city manager Robert Rizzo made nearly $800,000 a year, almost twice what the president makes. City council members were paid nearly $8,000 a month for attending meetings that either never took place or lasted only minutes. The district attorney said that is fraud.
This, needless to say, is corruption on steroids.
The 40,000 residents of Bell had been paying enormous property taxes and sewer fees. And today we're thrilled to see those in charge thrown in jail.
I'm ecstatic. I'm glad. It's about time they caught them.
They were not arrested for simply making enormous amounts of money.
Getting paid $1 zillion a year is not illegal in the state of California unless you do it by illicit and illegal means.
Officials say private citizens need to do a better job of being their own watchdog.
These officials thought they could get away with it, and they did get away with it for a number of years, and now finally people are looking at it and saying enough is enough.
The district attorney says the 8 arrested today face significant jail sentences. This is the biggest corruption scandal to be prosecuted in California in 3 decades.
So, not great. Erodes the public trust, right? The Bell scandal actually changed a lot of our conflict of interest laws and strengthened them immediately after this, which includes the Public Reform Act. So you cannot participate in, make, influence a governmental decision that has a foreseeable and material financial effect on you, your immediate family, or any of your economic interests. This sounds very lawyerly, so we're going to try and break it down into plain English to help you make decisions. So, who's a public official? It's all the folks. They're called Government Code 87200 filers. So, city attorney, city manager, treasurer, planning commission, city council, finance director, members of appointed bodies who have decision-making authority. Designated public servants, so that's all of our staff that are in the the conflict of interest code, and then consultants who serve in a staff capacity by contract or make decisions on behalf of the agency, so think building official, city engineer. Government decision is any action taken by an agency that has a financial effect on any person other than the governmental agency making the decision. So you cannot influence a decision through voting, discussing, or lobbying. Whoop, went too fast. What's a financial interest? So investments, income, business, real estate, and gifts. There's 5 total categories. There's Matt. So investments. So decisions involving investments in business, entities, or real estate property of 2,000 more can be a conflict of interest to you. For example, if you have an investment or ownership interest of 2,000 or more in property, rental property, or business entities. Usually these conflicts arise when you own property like land, commercial, or residential, or maybe you're an investor in land and you plan to develop it with friends and they need a permit or license, and guess what? You're on the planning commission and they need your help, right? In that instance, you would need to recuse yourself if they were business partners, right, of yours. Maybe you own rental property that will be affected by a new shopping center that the developer is trying to build across the street from your property. This conflict can also arise for you or your immediate family. If you're an investor in a business that wants to contract with the city or needs permits, or you need some other kind of entitlement. Note where there's no direct economic gain, like when a business provides services to the city for free, there can still be a financial benefit, such as prestige, publicity, goodwill, associated with the success from any contract with the business that can cause a disqualifying interest. Income, so decisions involving sources of income to you of $500 or more within the prior 12 months. So this includes you, your child, your partner's income, loans, guarantors, and promised income. So obviously you have a financial interest in your own income. and sources of income to you. If your employer comes before you for a decision, you would need to recuse yourself. Same is true if you're about to have an employer, right? You're about to change jobs. You have promised income that's coming to you in the next 12 months. If it's over $500, you would need to recuse yourself from that decision if they came before your body. Family income is community property, so spouses, domestic partners. It also includes their income. So if you have and it includes your dependent children. So if you have a teenage kid who works for an ice cream shop and they put a bid in to run the city's concession stand, and the decision's before you to approve the contract, if they're making more than $500 scooping ice cream, you'd have to recuse yourself. And then loans. A loan from someone can create an economic interest unless the loan is from a commercial institution, so like think Bank of America. But loan between individuals can be problematic under this rule. Okay, business position. Like I mentioned before, if a decision comes before you involving an entity where you serve in any of these positions, you will have a disqualifying interest and you can't participate in the decision. Okay, real estate. This one comes up more when you serve on a commission that deals with real property. So anytime there's a decision within, I would say 500 to 1,000 feet from your home or property that you own, it can be a business property as well. Assume some kind of analysis needs to be done to check to see if you have a conflict of interest. Under 500 feet, it's real hard to get out of that conflict. The rules are very strict. You have to prove by clear and convincing evidence that you don't have a conflict. Sometimes that involves getting an appraisal that there is no impact to your property. And it takes quite an analysis. So there is an exception for repairs, replacement of existing streets, water, sewer, storm drainage, all of these things. There are things that happen to everybody. So there's a public generally exemption that would apply there. And it might impact you if you lease, but there's no impact for month-to-month renters. Okay, personal finance. So where a decision is foreseeable, the decision where there's a foreseeable financial benefit or loss of $500 or more to you or your immediate family within 12 months. This is a little bit different than the income rule. It's known as the personal finance effect rule. It can include decisions that affect you or your immediate family that set salaries, change job classifications or positions. If you're the only person in that position or they are. It usually relates to hiring, promoting, demoting, suspension, and disciplinary action. And it can include decisions that affect your personal expenses, income, assets, liabilities for you and your family. So gifts. Any decision involving an individual entity, you've received an aggregate of 590 or more in the previous 12 months is a disqualifying conflict of interest. I find this rule really confusing because you're not allowed to accept gifts over $590 from anybody within a calendar year. So this rule kind of is odd. You do have to recuse yourself if that happens. And you also have to disclose the gifts on your Form 700, which we're going to cover a little bit later. It's the form you probably get an email once a year from Weston. You have to fill it out. We'll make a connection on why you need to do that. So as a general rule of thumb, to make it easy on yourself, don't provide or receive any gift that would appear to improperly influence your decisions, and you should be fine, right? So this means don't take anything from anybody that wants something from you, and don't give anything to anybody you want something from. Yes. Yeah. So the question, so that the people on the Zoom can hear, is whether or not receiving tickets from, for example, a community group. The example given was like a dance troupe to the Arts Commission, so that they could be aware of what's happening in the community. The answer is yes. There's a couple different ways that that would happen. If it depends on who's giving the gift. And there's a separate analysis for that. For example, if you're going to a nonprofit fundraiser and the nonprofit gives you the tickets as a public official, you're entitled to 2 tickets. You can take one other person. You don't have to report that as a gift. If in the example you gave with the dance troupe, it would be a gift, which would be the value of the tickets, and that would be reportable. Another example would be if the city has gifted tickets and they're distributed through the city's ticket policy, and they're reported on a public-facing form that goes on the city clerk's website. It's not counted as a gift against you, but the city does have to fill out paperwork to make sure that the public is aware that our public officials or city staff have received those gifts. Does that make sense? $590. So the comment was that folks want to know what's going on in town, and I think that that's still okay. It might be worthwhile to talking to Ben to have the tickets come through the city manager's office and see if that's an option, so that it's still being reported. But if that happens, whoever the ticket administrator is, and I haven't checked in a while, I would assume it's Ben, he would be able to distribute the tickets fairly to anybody. They wouldn't necessarily go to the Arts Commission, right? So if they're being given directly to you, they're reportable. $590 is a lot of money. Sure. So with a $20 ticket, if you got 2 tickets and you brought your partner or your kids or a friend, then you would claim both the ticket for you and your partner, which is $40. So in that instance, the threshold to report is $50. So, and the $50 is aggregate for the whole year. So if you, in the example you gave, if you got $40 in tickets one time as an arts commissioner, that wouldn't be reportable. The second time they gave you tickets, that'd be $80. I'm an attorney because I don't like math. So, right? That's $80. That would be reportable on your Form 700 because it's over the $50 threshold, right? So it depends. If you have questions like that as they come up, we're happy to answer them too. Yes. Yes. So for the folks on the Zoom, the comment was, unless a decision came before the body, receiving the tickets wouldn't necessarily be problematic. But I think that your comment was, there is a public perception, potentially, like that the community wants to know what you're doing. But then also we have an issue with the Arts Commission where folks are coming to the Arts Commission and asking for grant funding. And depending on the value of the ticket, right, I would say a lower value ticket may or may not garner public scrutiny. But as the ticket values get higher, let's say it's a really great show and the tickets are $200 a pop, right? it seems like the commissioner's potentially being influenced to give grant funding to those folks, right? From a public perception standpoint, right? You have to step outside of your own shoes, because I understand what you're saying, but you want to step outside of your own shoes and look at what your actions look like to an outsider, a reasonable member of the public, right? And so even with the lower value tickets, I think that there's an argument that you could be perceived that you're being influenced. But if you're being transparent about it and below the gift limit, it's legal. This goes back to our conversation at the beginning. Well, it wasn't really a conversation. I was just telling you stuff, but right, where it's ethical versus legal. It's legal for you to accept the tickets, but there might be a community perception that there's wrongdoing. So, but if from a financial conflict standpoint, if you're paying for your ticket to attend an event and you're being influenced of like, gee, we really gotta, this group, I hope they apply for grant funding because we should put more money into this. There's no financial conflict in that. If you're being influenced in a decision though, outside of what's happening in a public meeting, there can be a perception from the public that there is wrongdoing, right? I think what you're talking about is more of like being really moved by an art piece where you would want to contribute. I think if we're giving out grant funding, we have to be very careful to make sure that that process is fair and transparent. And if y'all are receiving tickets, that we're reporting them on our Form 700, that we're recusing when we have financial conflicts to avoid, we talked about this at the beginning, even a whiff that there's impropriety or wrongdoing, right? That somehow the arts commissioners are on the take, right? And right? And so we don't want that because then the public doesn't trust the Arts Commission. And that's not what we want. What we want is for the public to come to the Arts Commission or any of the commissions and say, hey, I got this really cool art thing happening in Ojai, right? And that kind of level of engagement. And so, and maybe the solution is for grant funding. I know Arts Council, like I don't want to get too far off topic, but the Arts Commission had been very selective last time of the folks that were getting the grants. A real easy way to avoid any appearance of wrongdoing is do what council did, and anybody that applies for the grant, you get a slice of the pie. And then you can go and you can attend these events, you can engage with the community, and none of your decisions are being influenced by whether or not you're attending events in the community. Does that make sense? Sure, I can understand the downside of it. My job is to keep you out of trouble with wrongdoing and appearances of wrongdoing. So my lens is different. I see where you're coming from of like trying to balance the interest. Yeah, sure. We'll move on after this one. So the comment is that like some of the community gets upset because the arts commissioners aren't necessarily going to all the events. So to frame it from the public standpoint, there can be a perception if you're only going to some events and then those events are the only ones that are getting grant funding, but there are a ton of things happening in town that you are being swayed by the tickets to give money to those folks. And from a public standpoint, that can be perceived as wrongdoing. And that somehow there's a big art conspiracy to only give grant funding to folks who give tickets to the art commission. And we don't want that. So we have to move on because we got a whole heck of a lot to say. But what I would recommend to you is I really encourage the commission to re-look at their process to determine if there's something that we can do that's more fair, to ensure that all of the community feels heard in this grants process. Because based off of the feedback that you're sharing, it sounds like that may not be the case and that there's a perception of wrongdoing by the arts commissioners. I think it's really important that we address that, especially when it comes to money and money being given by the city to the community, right? It's important that it looks fair and is fair, right? So that goes back to earlier, we talked about perception as reality, right? The perception is that maybe the Arts Commission isn't being fair with money, right? And grant funding. So I think that that's definitely something that your commission should have a public conversation about to address so that we can build the public's trust in that process. Okay, we can talk more about it offline too. Okay. All right. All right. We talked about this a little bit. General public exception. So if it applies to everybody, and your interest isn't unique to everybody's interest, you don't have to recuse yourself. So examples of this are usually like assessments, taxes, fees, rates, and charges. So the decision has to affect at least 25% of all businesses, nonprofits, properties, or individuals in the city, or 15% or 25% of real property. I'm not going to get really in the weeds on this. If you have a decision involving your property, I recommend that you reach out to our office. You can also reach out to the FPPC. We're happy to help you. FPPC does take longer to get back to you than my office does. So keep that in mind if you have a pressing decision, and we can help you navigate whether or not this is something that you can participate in, and we're always happy to do that. So how do you recuse yourself when you have a conflict? When the agenda item is announced, but before the discussion. Say publicly that you have a conflict of interest. Publicly identify each financial interest. Recuse yourself from participation in the discussion. Leave the room for the duration of the discussion. If you're on Zoom, mute and turn your camera off. We don't want you staring at people like trying to strong arm them into making a decision in your favor. Right? And then only return once the agenda item is, the next agenda item is called. Okay, pop quiz. A bakery needs to obtain a permit from the Planning Commission to operate within the city. Which one of these planning commissioners can vote on the item? Commissioner A's wife works full-time at the bakery. Commissioner B received a free breakfast, bagel, and coffee from the bakery. Commissioner C lives within 700 feet of the bakery. Commissioner D lent the owners of the bakery $3,000 9 months ago. Commissioner E owns a business next to the bakery. Who wants to try? Yes. That's not... So the answer was none of them. There is one commissioner hiding in here who can vote on the item. Assume that they're the normal. So the question was, how expensive was the bagel and coffee? I would assume that they're the normal price, which seems to be like $15 these days. Correct. The Commissioner B receiving a free breakfast of bagel and coffee from the bakery wouldn't be a conflict, so they could participate in the decision. So working full-time at the bakery, their wife... It's their immediate family. It's a financial interest because she's employed with the bakery. That's a conflict. Living with 750 feet of the bakery. That's a conflict. There may be a way to navigate around this. Yes. So the 500-foot standard is the absolutely... It is very difficult to get out of participating. So the 750-foot standard still applies. I think that a lot of times people only talk about the 500-foot rule because that's the easiest one to remember. These other rules exist, but the further your property gets away from the decision and the property impacted by a decision, the more likely it is that you can participate. For example, I had a commissioner who had a very nice house, not a commissioner, a council member, on a body of water. And the city chose, like, there was a project, and I'm trying to remember, it was 803 feet from her property, from the parcel line to the project. The project was to turn a public park into a waterway to connect a natural preserve to the ocean. Her property was on the ocean. So I worked very hard to explain to the FPPC why that change in the use, the fact that we were digging a hole in the ground that was grass before to allow water to come through, and the use of that land was not going to change, had no financial impact on her property, so that she could vote on decisions that happened in the lagoon and that happened on the body of water. And they agreed, right? But in a different situation, if within 750 feet, we would have to do more of an analysis. This was for sake of an example. But if there were traffic impacts or whatever the project is would impact the value of the council member's home, they wouldn't be able to participate in it. The 500-foot rule is the easiest one because I've yet to see somebody participate in something that was within 500 feet of your house. Yes. No, I think so. Well, so the question was, why would a commissioner, to get evaluation. Yeah, so the question was, why would a commissioner pay for evaluation to show that they will be harmed financially if so that they won't be harmed financially so they can participate in a decision. I have yet to see that come up with a commissioner. That tends to come up with council members. And typically council members who are extremely ambitious and voting on that project is a very big deal in the community or politically because they have aspirations or something else. Typically, commissioners that live within 500 feet of a decision recuse themselves and we move on. There's usually not a big political struggle for commissioners at that level. I've literally in my career have never seen that. It's always council members who are quite ambitious that are fighting. Like, for example, the city I came from is going to participate in the Olympics. The amount of conversations that I've had to work through whether or not a council member was conflicted out of voting on the Olympics was a lot. And it involved conversations of potentially getting an appraisal to ensure that they could participate in that decision, right? No, it's okay. No, yeah. No, it's okay. So another example of what not to do. This gentleman pleaded guilty after the FBI had investigating him for accepting money hotel room, expensive meals, bottle service at a nightclub, female escorts in Las Vegas. And it was all for helping a real estate developer.
For LA City Councilman Mitch Englander is now in the custody of the FBI. We're told he's accused of lying to agents in a wide-ranging corruption probe of City Hall. KCO9's Dave Lopez is live in downtown LA with the details. Dave?
Well, it was 17 months ago that Mitch Englander stunned everyone and resigned his position as city council member, even though he had 2 years left, saying that he had a job in the private sector that was just, quote, too good to pass up. Today, he faced a judge. He faces the possibility of a long prison term. He's ordered free on bail, $50,000 once his wife posts it, and he has to surrender the 7 weapons that he has inside his home.
We'll go ahead and open the roll.
49-year-old Mitch Englander was a powerful member of the LA City Council. He's also a member of the LAPD Reserve Unit. And now he's looking at 50 years in federal prison if convicted for his alleged role in a scandal that has rocked City Hall and leaving many to wonder just how far will this go. In November of 2018, FBI agents raided the City Hall office of Councilmember Jose Rizar. Rizar has not been arrested as the investigation continues. Englander's name was never mentioned in that initial raid, but now he's under arrest, and Huizar's investigation by the FBI is ongoing.
I'm here to work. I'm here to do my job.
That was Huizar 2 weeks after the FBI searched his offices and his home, and that has been his standard answer ever since. Today, he had no comment about Englander's arrest. Englander, as well as Huizar, had been a member of the Plan and Land Use Management Committee, PLUM for short, the committee that oversees many of the major commercial and residential development projects in the city of Los Angeles. According to the indictment, a developer who had business in Los Angeles gave Englander a free trip to Las Vegas in June of 2017. The allegations, he also gave him $10,000 in cash, $1,000 in casino chips, paid for Englander's party for a $34,000 bar bill, $2,481 dinner tab, and $300 for an escort. And he's accused of telling the businessman, don't say any of this to the FBI, especially about the massage lady. Englander adding, don't say it, don't mention. No, don't mention it. The attorney for Englander did not go on camera, issued a written statement where she basically said that he has done a lot for the city and that he will overcome this obstacle, is the way she put it, with the help of his family. Also, John Lee was the chief of staff for Englander. He said today that he was in Las Vegas on the weekend in question, but he says that he did not get anything free. He paid for everything, was unaware of anything illegal that went on, and he also added that he is fully cooperating with this investigation with the FBI, and he's been interviewed at least 4 times. Again, Englander is free to go once his wife posts his $50,000 bond. Reporting live from outside the Roy Ball Center in downtown L.A., Dave Lopez, KCO9 News.
All right, Dave, thank you.
Okay, so interest in contracts. As a public official, you can't have a financial interest in a contract made by a body that you're a member of. The rules on this are very strict and they're complicated. If you have a contract, or your family has a contract that's coming before your commission, you should call our office and we will work through it with you. So making a contract includes voting to approve, designating specifications, preliminary discussions, negotiating, and actually signing a contract.
Well,
I'm going to skip some of these. Nobody in this room, from what I can tell, is running for office. Is that accurate? Yes? We're just going to skip this because it doesn't apply to you unless you're a candidate for office. Yes. They have to leave the room. They have to leave the room. It's definitely leave. The only exception I would say is consent calendar, but it would just be easier if the rule was to just leave rather than making exceptions. And on Zoom, shut it off, shut your mic off, shut the camera off. Okay, incompatible offices. So it's incompatible for you to hold multiple offices if there's potential for a clash of your duties or loyalties between the offices, or either the officer exercises a supervisory, auditory, or removal power over the other. You forfeit the first office upon acceding to the second, and it doesn't apply to city employees. So incompatible activities. This one, you can't engage in anything. Employment, activity, enterprise for money, which is inconsistent, incompatible, in conflict with, or harmful to your duties, functions, and responsibilities as a city official. I see this one comes up a lot. I came from a city where I had folks working for the planning department doing appraisals, and they wanted to do appraisals outside the city. Or you work for the planning department and you want to work for a developer that brings projects before the city. That would be a conflict. I hope this isn't a surprise to anybody, but you can't be bribed. It's illegal. And that is requesting, receiving, or agreeing to receive money in exchange for an official action. And it is anything of value, not just money. Got another fun example for you.
Today, the FBI agents arrest LA City Councilman Ojai. Ojai has long been suspected in a corruption scandal. These are actually bundles of cash, just some of the bribes he is accused of accepting. Ojai now faces a federal racketeering case. NBC4's I-Team has been following the evolving City Hall scandal, and Eric Leonard is live with the very latest on that for us. Eric.
Well, Colleen, federal prosecutors have described corruption inside LA City Hall as a cancer, a disease of elected officials who've allegedly ignored what's best for the public and instead have lined their pockets. The 116-page complaint against Jose Huizar is a first-ever racketeering case brought against a sitting elected official in L.A., and the U.S. Attorney for Southern California says this is one of the most significant public corruption cases ever.
This is the first time a RICO charge has been used with respect to the city council. As you can see from the extensive affidavit, the corruption alleged was longstanding, encompassed many different projects, and involved a number of different individuals.
The feds say Huizar is the fifth to face charges in a large conspiracy and was referred to by the alleged conspirators as the boss, who's now accused of accepting $1.5 million in bribes and other enticements, like these bundles of cash the FBI seized from Huizar's closet. In exchange, Huizar is accused of pushing projects through approval, interfering with labor unions, and limiting demands for the number of affordable housing units that cost the developers profits.
Another developer who made substantial contribution to the political action committees later bragged in an email to employees that Mr. Huizar helped them get the go-ahead for a 35-story building.
That is this project in the Arts District, where construction began earlier this year. The developer didn't return our calls. The feds say no one who saw what was happening inside City Hall reported it. And it wasn't until someone in Las Vegas said they saw Huizar with a huge amount of casino chips, as seen in these security camera images in the case file, that the FBI got involved.
And reveals a cast of characters who made decisions about Los Angeles city development on behalf of wealthy donors, regardless of what was in the best interest of its residents.
Huizar made his initial appearance in federal court just in the last couple of hours by video link. He's expected to be released from custody sometime this afternoon on a $100,000 bond and has been ordered to return to court next month to enter pleas to the charges, though in all likelihood he'll be indicted by a grand jury before that happens. Now, the LA City Council has voted to suspend Huizar. The council president says she's also begun the process of removing him from office. LA's mayor said today Huizar violated the trust of the people and says the mayor has zero tolerance for criminal behavior and corruption. Reporting live, I'm investigating.
Okay, so definitely examples of what not to do and how it can affect the public trust, right? This side, nobody in this room, I believe, can go into closed session. So, but if knowingly disclosing confidential information for your gain is a crime. Also, 1 year after you, bless you, leave city service, you're prohibited from lobbying or communicating with the city or your previous commission for compensation to influence an action, administrative action, permit, license, contract, or property transactions. You cannot influence any city decisions when the interests of your potential employer are at stake. We're going to get through this, and then we will take a break. Loans, we talked about this earlier. You can't receive loans from we didn't. A city officer, employee member, or consultant with anyone that contracts with the city. And then there are certain rules for personal loans over $500. That information is available on the FPPC's website. We talked about gifts a little bit earlier, so you have to disclose gifts $50 or more in your Form 700. And don't provide any gifts that appear that you would be influencing, that would influence your decisions. So gifts include a payment of anything of value when you don't provide consideration for it, for the value or the benefit of the gift, includes your spouses and dependent children. And it's considered given as of the date it's received or promised. So examples: stuff, food, tickets, services, gifts from raffles. I'm not going to read these all to you, but they are in the PDF. What the exception is for the gifts restrictions, like home hospitality, going to your friend's house for dinner is not a gift. If you're a Supreme Court justice and your friends happen to be very important people who also come before you, yeah, and you happen to go to very fancy restaurants, or a chef comes, Thomas Keller comes to their home for the home meal, that's a very different situation. I've also included the information for you here on reporting travel. We don't really have to get into that because y'all don't travel that much, right? Same thing, don't accept tickets, transportation companies. This doesn't come up a lot for what you do, so we'll keep moving. So what to do with an unwanted gift within 30 days? Donate it to charity. It can't be a charity that you are a part of and that your family is a part of. You also can't claim it on your taxes because that's a benefit. You can return it unused. Reimburse the donor for the fair market value. For tickets, don't use them or let anybody else use them. If you give tickets that you received as a gift to somebody else, it is still a gift to you that is reportable. I've included this summary for you to take with you when you go home. Honoraria. Honoraria is a fancy word for saying you get paid for public speaking about things. Generally, it's prohibited. If this comes up, please contact us. We're happy to walk through the facts of your situation to help you. Misuse of city resources. So you can't use city resources for personal enjoyment, non-public purposes, or campaign activities. That seems like a no-brainer, but city resources is anything city stuff, right? Lands, buildings, money, staff time, travel, equipments and phones, vehicles. I'm going to skip this example so we can get moving. You also can't use city resources for campaign activities. So that means advocating for or against a ballot measure or a candidate, including yourself. Mass mailings, this is good to know about, but y'all don't really have this problem in Ojai. You can't send more than 200 substantially similar items that feature an elected officer using city funds. It's good to know about it in case you come for office. Here are the exceptions. Gifts of public resources. So we can't just give money to people because we're the government. It'd be a gift of public funds and it's illegal under the Constitution. So we have to get consideration, which is a fancy legal word for saying we have to get something back for what we're giving you money for. So for example, we couldn't donate to Help of Ojai just to donate to them because they do a real great job. They need to provide services back to us in exchange for the money that we give him. We're stewards of the public's money. It's really important that we are responsible with that money. And the expenditure has to serve a public purpose.
Soledad now, and more than 100 school staff there with the school district being asked to repay a year's worth of overpaid wages. A year's worth. Action News 8 reporter Christian Valderas is live in Soledad with details. Christian?
Yeah, Aaron, multiple employees have told me that the district officials are meeting with them individually to outline their options and get them to sign a repayment plan. They're being told if they don't sign that agreement, legal action.
Oh no. Okay, I'll summarize it for you. city staff got overpaid a substantial amount of money, and then the city had to come back and say, oops, you need to pay us back that money because you didn't actually provide the services that we paid for. And the employees were real mad. Right. And the issue was it would be illegal for the city to do that. We actually can't give bonuses for doing your job. It's against the law. So the employees had to pay the money back or face legal consequences. There are really serious consequences for unlawful uses of public resources. You can lose office forever. You can pay $1,000 a day for the violation plus 3 times the amount. You can go to federal prison for 2 to 4 years. This doesn't include the cost of defending the lawsuit and hiring defense lawyers and all the things that come with breaking the law. Okay, let's take a break for about 15 minutes and then we'll come back. So transparency for public officials. The principle for transparency laws is so the public trusts what it can see. So we always put the sun with it. Things that happen in the daylight. Democracy dies in darkness. I don't know if you've ever heard that. The more transparent that we can be as a government agency, the more likely it is that the public will trust our decisions and the things that we're doing. It promotes participation. And there's two types. Transparency for public officials, that's you. And then transparency of government processes to the public, like the Public Records Act. That the Form 700, which I'm sure you all dread. So certain public officials are required to disclose their financial interest. It includes anybody that has to make decisions, and you file it when you take office, annually, and then when you leave office. The whole point of the Form 700, which I feel like we never talk about, is that it provides transparency and accountability to the public about your financial interests, so that we're being transparent about the decisions that you shouldn't be participating in, right? Because of what your interests are. It ensures that officials are making decisions in the best interest of the public and not their own personal finances. And it helps you identify and avoid your own conflicts of interest when you have to outline them. My hot tips for you: don't be that public official. You can turn around and look at our deputy city clerk. He's a very nice person. When he sends you the email to file your Form 700, please don't make him chase you down. Just do it. Get it out of the way when it comes in so we don't have to chase you down. It helps to keep a running total throughout the year of the gifts, what source. Once you file it with your financial interest, unless you're an investor or trading, you shouldn't have a lot of changes. It gets easier every year, right? To just refile the same forms that you had before, making minor tweaks. Also, if you have a spouse or domestic partner, community property, 50% of what they have is yours. And you have to report it as an economic interest on your Form 700 to you. So fair processes. As a public official, you're required to exercise your powers free from bias. Be fair and impartial when your body is sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity. Usually quasi-judicial capacity, we're talking permits, annexations, disciplinary hearings, licenses, and appeals. It's similar. The council or the commission is sitting and acting like a judge in a quasi-judicial hearing. And it's something that's typically appealable. So due process in a fair hearing requires notice of the intended action, an opportunity to prepare, opportunity for the parties to be heard, fair and impartial hearing, and decision makers, that's you. And the types of decisions are legislative and quasi-judicial. Legislative doesn't necessarily have due process, but the quasi-judicial does. So what happens when there's not a fair hearing? It can be a basis for a court to overturn the decision. That's very embarrassing. Don't be the commissioner that caused a decision to go to court and have it be overturned and then come back. It also affects the public's trust in government. If you were someone who participated in a decision that you had a financial interest, or maybe I've seen cases with council members who made a decision and made notes about the decision that they made about a hearing before they made the decision, and then they read from those notes at the dais. That's a big no-no, right? So when you come to the dais, you want to not have made up your mind yet because you haven't heard all of the evidence yet. So ex parte contacts are a part of being unbiased. Ex parte contacts occur when a communication between a government decision maker, that's you, and a third party outside of the official proceedings and off the record. So I've provided some examples for you here of when this can happen. The big ones for you before a project comes or an appeal before a commission, before a license, project, or contract goes before a body for review or approval, while an application is pending with the city, before an appeal is heard by BAB, or the Building Appeals Board, for those folks who don't know who the BAB is. And it can happen between you, parties, city staff, other commissioners, and council members. So what do you do when an ex parte contact happens? I've only had the pleasure of working with the Planning Commission. They have a standing item that addresses this, where they disclose their contacts at the beginning of the agenda item to be transparent to the community. It's not a big deal. It's not anything to feel shame about, and it's not anything to hide, right? I went on a site visit. I bumped into the applicant. We talked about how it's been real hot in Ojai lately. Great. So everybody, all of the parties have an opportunity to react to whatever the ex parte contact was. The other option, depending on the degree of the contact, is to recuse yourself from the decision to avoid any appearance of wrongdoing. So how to provide a fair hearing? Avoid ex parte contacts to the extent possible. If they happen, disclose them. Don't express your opinions about a matter before it comes before your body. Don't do it in the paper. Don't do it to your friends. You shouldn't have an opinion yet because you don't know all the facts, right? Receive and consider all the evidence about a matter only when it's presented to you at the hearing. Don't make a decision till you've heard all of the facts and have weighed the evidence. And then I haven't seen this as much in Ojai, but don't contact city staff to nudge them along on what should be happening for a project, a license, or an application. Competitive bidding. This is required by the city. Competition ensures that we're being transparent and that we get the best price for the city. It gives everybody an opportunity to do business on an equal basis with the city. And then our job is to be good stewards of the public's finance. So we're trying to get the best deal we can and the best person to do the job. Nepotism is not great. It's favoritism based on kinship. So you absolutely have to disqualify yourself from participating in decisions that increase or decrease your immediate family's expenses, income, assets, or liabilities, or where they have a financial interest. There's not really a specific state law on concerning nepotism for hiring and appointing. The city can draft anti-nepotism policies. We, I believe, are working on an anti-nepotism policy, so that may be coming to you soon. The Brown Act. Hopefully this isn't the first time you've heard of the Brown Act. It's a pretty important part of your job as a commissioner, and I will be a little sad if today is the first day that you're hearing about it. So the idea of the Brown Act is to avoid appearances of wrongdoing by having transparent meetings. This occurred, the change in law happened because, surprise, government officials were having meetings in secret. Public wasn't aware. It was very nefarious, feels like a good word. And so the Brown Act was passed. So all meetings have to be open in public. Actions and deliberations have to be taken openly. Everyone has the right to attend and participate meetings, and only matters on the agenda can be discussed. I'm going to mention this twice. I really don't enjoy commissioner comments. It gives me indigestion. Y'all seem to have it on your agenda. It turns very quickly into a free-for-all on discussing things that are not on the agenda. That is not the point of staff reports and commissioner comments. It's, hey, I went to this really cool community event. There's an adoption drive on Saturday. It'd be great if folks came down. Whatever the thing is, it's a quick mention, or, hey, I want to talk about, for Judy, tiny homes. I'm really interested in tiny home regulations, and I'd like to talk, maybe we could make a recommendation to council, right? Does anybody else second that we can put that on the agenda? Yes or no? And we're done. because the public will have an opportunity to, bless you, to discuss the item and receive notice when it comes before the commission. When y'all engage in discussions of things that aren't on the agenda, the public doesn't know, bless you, that they should participate and should come tell you their opinions, and it's very problematic. Also, this is problematic, responding to public comment. Never seen a community that cares about each other and is so invested in each other as Ojai, and it's so awesome. However, that can be problematic in the Brown Act because y'all know each other. It's very easy to engage in a back and forth with folks during public comment. I would encourage you to limit that discussion because the public doesn't know that they should be there for that discussion. And it's a slippery slope. It's very easy for folks to get off topic for things that aren't on the agenda. So at least be very careful when you're doing that and limit it wherever possible. Also, don't argue with the public when they do the public comment. Just politely say thank you and move on, right? So the point of it is to avoid appearances of wrongdoing without improperly discussing city business without the public present. And then it also helps protect due process rights. Who's subject to the Brown Act? Legislative bodies include subcommittees created by formal action. We don't have a ton of subcommittees here. Any of the bodies created by city council, which is you. Any bodies that receives funds. We don't have it as much here, but it could. I had a lot of, they're known as BIDs, business improvement districts, in other cities I've worked in. It doesn't include ad hoc committees. Ad hoc committee, very, very limited purpose and limited time that you're working on something to come back. It's not an ongoing issue. Like I think the grants committee, that would be a subcommittee, right? Actually, that's not true. That could be an ad hoc because it's for a temporary period of time and you dissolve it every year. So what is a meeting? Anytime a majority of your commission is in the same place at the same time to discuss, hear, or deliberate things, legal duties within the scope that's assigned to you is a meeting. A quorum's needed to hold the meeting. It varies from commission to commission. I'll use planning commission as an example. 5, a quorum is 50% plus 1, so it's 3, right? We need 3 people to hold a meeting. That gets tricky, right? Because when commissioners are in the same place at the same time and the public's not there and it wasn't noticed, it can be problematic. And that can turn into what's called a serial communication. So serial communications are prohibited. It means each communication involves less than a series of members, but the collection of all of the communications turn into a consensus of the majority, which sounds like a bunch of legal words, but we're going to break it down into examples. So hub and spoke. Hub and spoke is when one person's at the center and they reach out to individual commissioners to get a consensus. So a member contacts all the other members on the body to ensure they vote yes on an important item. Shouldn't be coming to a decision outside of a meeting. Daisy chain is another one. So this is where member blue contacts green, green contacts orange, orange contacts pink, and then we got the whole rainbow of folks that are discussing an agenda item without the public present and coming to a consensus. That would be prohibited. Informal consent, you shouldn't be coming to an informal consensus outside of a public meeting. So the question was, how would you know if other folks had been contacted and there would be a majority for this daisy chain example, right? That was the question. So what I would encourage you to do is create a culture of talking about the Brown Act. And I know that that sounds very nerdy, but what other agencies I know have done is say, I've already Brown Acted with Commissioner Brown on this, and I can only talk to one other person. And so you set an affirmative boundary with that person. Or when they begin the conversation, you say, have you had any other Brown Act interactions with a commissioner on this? And then it's on the other person to be honest with you or not. And I would hope that they would be. To be transparent about the communication so that you're regulating yourselves. You can talk to less than a majority. So Planning Commission, if 3 is quorum, you got one other person you can talk to it about. And sometimes that's the chair, right? Chair, I'm really concerned about this agenda item, yada, 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 right? And you can have that discussion, not coming to a consensus, and especially for Planning Commission, HPC, and the BAB, not making a decision outside the meeting, right? But being transparent about your context. Does that help answer your question? Okay. Yes, Mr. Daddy. So the example, so the example given was a legal action where the chair communicated to staff the information that needed to be disseminated to the commission. I think the example that was shared is unique in the sense that there was a legal action happening. So not a decision that's necessarily coming before the commission. And in that instance, it would be okay for staff to disseminate. Yeah, so legal advice is different than coming to a consensus. So staff can violate the Brown Act. For example, Ben has one-on-one meetings with council members, and in those meetings, I'm not going to use Ben as an example because he doesn't do this. So let's say in another city manager has meetings with all of the council members. And in that meeting, the city manager is like, we'd really appreciate your support for the new library. Thanks, council member. Mayor, we'd really appreciate your support on the item coming to council for the new library. And one by one, that's more hub and spoke than it is daisy chain. Right? But in that example, the city manager is getting consensus on an item that's coming before the commission. That's not what those meetings are for. They're briefings to address things that are coming up. If we talk about agenda items, it's to make sure that staff is prepared to answer questions. We're receiving information. We're not sharing information in order to get a consensus. Does that make sense? Yeah? We're good? So communications by representative, that's what we just talked about, kind of. In the example with having staff do it for you. In the example we have on the screen, Member Green's partner volunteers at the same nonprofits conveniently as other commissioners and is like, hey, are you going to vote on this super important agenda item? Right? That wouldn't be allowed. Having a representative go out and garner support, or we're not going to approve that project, right? Right? We don't want that here. That we're not doing that. you're going to vote no, right? No, right? You can't do that, right? The decisions have to be made in the meeting so the public can participate. So, technology is a big one, and be very careful. So text threads, reply all on email. Staff usually will BCC you on an email or counsel to make sure that you don't accidentally reply all. It's to protect you. Social media. There's been case law now there was a change in the law where if y'all are liking the same post, one commissioner posts something and says, I don't think that we should approve this project for the bowling alley, right? To use your example, who's with me? And all the other commissioners like the comment. That's a consensus, right? That's a violation of the Brown Act. You've come to a consensus outside the meeting. Don't do that, right? I'd really encourage you to not engage with, first of all, you have a First Amendment right to live your life. You can do whatever you want. I don't recommend that you talk about decisions that come before your body on social media. That's just generally not a good idea. Or be careful which other members of your commission that you're following. So we have an example here of all the various ways that social media can result in a consensus. I know I tell you a lot of things tonight that you can't do. What you can do, the Brown Act doesn't prohibit individual contacts. So speaking to another commissioner, you can still talk to each other. You just can't talk to a majority, and just be real careful about it and be transparent about, when I say be careful, be transparent about people who you've already talked to so that you're keeping your number below the majority if you are going to talk to people before a meeting or members. You can talk to staff. You can talk to the community, consultants, attorneys, colleagues. You can also go to a conference open to the public, a local public meeting like this one that's open to the public. A quorum can be here. The open meeting of another body and a social event or ceremony is okay. But I highly recommend that you don't huddle in the corner, look like you're telling secrets. That's a problem, right? Even if you're telling secrets about what you're getting your partner for Christmas, the public's perception of what you're doing is you're telling secrets about commission business, and we don't. We want to protect you from them. Agenda posting requirements. Public's entitled to notice about the meetings. It's 72 hours prior for a regular meeting, 24 for a special. Agenda descriptions. The public should be very clear about what we're talking about. It shouldn't be things like approve contract 73592. Like, nobody knows what that is. Be transparent about approve, contract with the sheriff's department for community policing services, right? So that the public knows I want to join. I want to participate in that item. And meetings have to be held within the city. And then accessible under the ADA. There are rules for virtual. We do not have time to get into all of those new rules. If you are sick, you need to participate virtually, or you have an emergency, contact staff. The public has a lot of rights under the Brown Act to comment on any matter on the agenda, even if it's not on the agenda, to record the meeting, to review and see writings that are given to you as a body. They don't have to register, and they don't have to tell you their names. Excuse me. They also have the right to witness votes. The only exception to that is closed session. There are no secret ballots, so y'all can't write your yes or no on paper, your eyes and your nose, and pass that down so we don't know what you voted. You're on the commission to give your opinion about what's happening in this community. Own that. Vote no if you don't believe in something that you're doing. Vote yes if you do, right? Be transparent. Closed session. So it takes place in private without the public or the press. Has to be on the list of things under the Brown Act. There are very limited exemptions. Litigation is one. Employment is another one. Security threat, I think, is the third one. Personnel. So they're confidential. Only authorized people are attend. Even as an attorney, if I'm not authorized to work on the file, I don't get to go, right? Only the people that are necessary to be in the room for the matter are supposed to be there. And then they're confidential. And then there's a report out of the actions taken and the vote. That usually happens with the city attorney. Violations of the Brown Act, there's civil action and criminal. It is a misdemeanor. Cost of attorney fees can be awarded to successful parties for civil actions. And you can prevent future actions of the Brown Act. We're almost done. We're rounding third. We're about to slide into home. So PRA, the public has a right to access records. They have the right to, of the city, they have the right to inspect them unless an exception applies. During city business hours, the right to receive copies of the records promptly. I'm going to be honest with you. Most records have to be redacted to protect personal information. Seeing them during business hours is difficult, but it can be done. But usually you can't just pop into City Hall and look at records. Yes, Mr. Daddy. Yes. Oh, there's a whole heck of a lot of exceptions. Sure. So the questions for the folks online are, what are some examples of exemptions under the PRA? Yeah, for the city. So, for example, if this one has a balancing test that we have to resolve, that the public interest will not be reserved in releasing the record, the drafts exemption, where memos that the city is working on before they go prime and become a public record, either to council or like agenda items, when we bleed all over them internally and we leave notes and we're making decisions about what policies should and should not be, and we haven't worked through those ideas and they're not ready for prime time. It depends. So the question is when action is taken. Sure. So all of the information is subject to the PRA, but I would argue that not all of it would be subject to release. So it depends on the degree of sensitivity of the information being discussed and the timeliness of the action. So not everything automatically comes releasable. The more time that passes from a discussion and a decision, the more likely it would be to be released. Another example would be a personnel matter. Like no, the FPPC. So the question is if we go for the FPPC for a ruling on the information. So if you had a problem and you believe that the city improperly withheld records, you would file a writ and explain why you thought that they improperly redacted or withheld records under the Public Records Act and why you were entitled to them. Which one? So the question was, what does promptly mean? And the example given was there was a public records request for someone's own file, and it took 30 days. So there is no legal definition of promptly. Promptly, when the court looks at that, it's determined on a variety of factors. I can tell you right now, in the city of Ojai, there are enough permanent staff to fill the trolley, is how many staff members that we have. And it doesn't even completely fill the trolley. So promptly for Ojai, in doing their best, where sometimes Weston is the only person who is working on those public records requests on top of his other duties, The city does its best to produce the records as quickly as possible, but it also requires oftentimes legal review, which takes time, and to collect the records, which takes time, and sometimes it's digitizing the records so that we can scan it. So it depends on the amount of information, the records, where they're located, and how much staff resources are dedicated to it. I can tell you in my experience with the city, they do have a records program. I've been talking for a real long time. Weston is working on technology solutions to be able to serve the community more efficiently and effectively. I know I've spoken to Lucas. He has long-term plans of scanning records to make sure that they're digitized and that we can provide them easier. So oh, well, that's good to know. So it's the plain meaning of the word. I don't know. So I'm going to say for your example, I don't know. Because I don't know the extent of the records. I don't know whether they needed to be scanned. I don't know the degree of redactions. Because just because we're giving them to you, they're available to everybody. Your home address is on every single page. Somebody's got to redact that. Your social security number, maybe your personal information. Maybe I work with other cities that I'm sure not in this example because we contract for the fire department, but fire department records, some of them are medical, right? So the information has to be gone through to make sure that we are protecting your privacy because anyone is entitled to that information once that public record is released. So permits, the question is whether is that new? No, this is the basis of the Public Records Act. Permits are quite different, and some agencies are more protective of the right to privacy than others. And most of the exemptions are discretionary. An agency can waive them. It can differ from agency to agency, the culture of what redaction is. I can tell you in the city of Ojai, we do our best to protect the residents' privacy and not release information unnecessarily to the public, especially to protect folks that are maybe submitting complaints about their neighbors. We would protect that information. The statute allows for it. It is policy to determine how strictly you're going to protect the public's information. I know agencies such as LAPD, they just release everything. So building department is very different, right? And in my brain, I've seen police records to building records to personnel records to memos, administrative action. Like I've seen, so when you ask me a question, I'm thinking not just of your specific scenario, the universe of records that it applies to. Well, that's something that you can definitely make a public comment about. We're almost done. So writings, digital pen and paper records, handwritten, typed, text emails, photos, emails. We're only required to give the record in the format that we keep it. If you have a MacBook, we're not giving you whatever the Mac program is for Word. We're going to give you, the city uses Microsoft. We're going to give you a Microsoft document because that's how the city keeps it. Or most likely we'll give you a PDF if we have to redact it. But that was for an example. So here are some examples of public records for the sake of time because we're almost done. I haven't seen this as much here, but oh no, this isn't the slide. So this one, emails on your personal devices, text messages, posts on your social media about city business are public records. If you're asked to provide them in response to a public records request, it's your obligation to provide them. And you're responsible if you don't comply. and someone sues for those records in a PRA lawsuit, you could be subpoenaed for them. Social media. If you post on content related to the city's business on your personal social media account, there is new case law from the Supreme Court. Don't recommend that you block anybody on your social media if you're talking about city business from accessing your page. You should follow the city's social media policy. It's based off of the First Amendment. If you want to delete posts, and I recommend that you archive the content you've posted instead of deleting it. That is the end of this presentation. Do you have any questions? Mr. Daddy, how can I help you? So the question is if there's a law that prevents folks from texting live to council members on the dais. Not to my knowledge, as a going back to public perception. Yep, you're good. We're at 2 hours. There's a public perception of wrongdoing in doing that. I definitely wouldn't recommend it. If a member of the public requested those text messages, it would be the responsibility of the council member to provide them. Yes, that's what I just said. So it's a public record that could be requested. It's the responsibility of the council member to provide it. Thank you for your time this evening. You're welcome. It was nice seeing all of you live and in person. Probably Monday, because this is a very long week. So I will make sure to write those up and get those out as quickly as possible. Likely this weekend. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was nice meeting you. Bye. I know